Let's get into it. So at the bottom, lightweight is where we start. Whether it's Luke Flores, whether it's Ty Flores, I have no idea what they want me to call him, but I guess he goes by both. Undefeated or 9-1, coming off a Combate America's stint. And here's what's crazy. He was featured in the first summer of the Contender Series and fought on the very last fight, on the very last week, against a guy in Matt Frivola. Obviously, if you know and you watch the UFC, you can probably put 2 and 2 together. Say since Matt Frivola is in the UFC right now, Frivola did win that fight. That is Flores' only professional loss. But man, it was a crazy fight. And ironically enough, Flores goes from last fight of the summer on the Contender Series in 2017 to the very first fight on the installment of 2020. We'll get into Jordan Leavitt in a second, but Flores is a guy. How much do you think he could have possibly improved since then, man? I mean, 3 years and he only fought twice. One of them ended by injury really quickly. Where are you going to be looking in terms of seeing where he could potentially improve from the last time he had an attempt at a UFC contract?
In terms of how much he's improved, I would kind of give him the benefit of the doubt in that, like you just had up there, he's got 10 professional fights only. He's in his early 30s, but like for MMA years, he's still young. Those improvements that we see out of him on a fight-to-fight basis can be pronounced, assuming that he's in the gym working. I looked at his Instagram, and he seems to be doing just that. What he needs to improve, though, most compellingly, though, is the takedown defense. That's what you alluded to, the fight with Frivola, which he eventually lost by submission. Frivola took him down a couple times, was able to threaten with submission attempts, and that will be like basically the difference maker here. I do think that he's like pretty solid and well-rounded, but that area, is the area that he'll need to, hope that he could improve to probably keep the fight standing. I do think that on the ground, his opponent here in Jordan Leavitt is going to look to take it there, Leavitt. But yeah, in terms of like what he has going for him, he has that experience on the Contender Series. He's more experienced than Jordan, and those factors alone could mean big dividends for him in the matchup, because we don't know what Jordan is like as he moves his way up the ranks. Jordan's only 6-0. Big opportunity here. Hasn't fought the level of competition that Jose has. So I'd say that like experience and just overall feel for under the bright lights are certainly some things that Jose has going for him.
I'm glad you brought that up when you talk about the competition. Here's where I'll give it to you. However, there's a caveat in that. You aren't incorrect, in my opinion, necessarily. However, here is where I will say there's an interesting caveat there. Leavitt, most of Leavitt's opponents, right, are fairly inexperienced. One of the most key, what matters very little when going into a fist fight, anything having to do with anything other than these two things right here. But when we're talking about something that involves as much game planning and tactical awareness as this, sometimes these numbers matter. What I'm getting to is Leavitt, while his previous opponents are lacking in experience, you can make a case that tit for tit, talent for talent, they're better than Flores's outside of Frivola. When you take Frivola out of the equation, you do the math. The previous opponents of Flores combined to be 54, 50, and 2, right? You take Frivola out of that equation, 45, 49, and 1. So most of the guys that he's fought have had losing records. Leavitt, here's the big thing for me with Leavitt. There's a lot of unknowns there. Can he grapple his ass off? Yes. Is he going to be a threat to submit you? Yes. Is he very capable of winning this fight by submission? Yes. Is he, at least to me, tell me if you agree with me, I get the feeling when I watch him on the feet, he says in interviews he's comfortable. He says in interviews, everybody that's inside the gym with me knows how I can strike. We need to see that on film. I see a guy who clearly and obviously exuberates confidence in his grappling game, and rightfully so. However, almost to his own fault, he looks at times to be almost too comfortable allowing guys into his guard. Do you agree with that assessment?
Yeah, I do. He kind of reminds me of like Brennan Allen in a way. Like, I think it's kind of like not irrelevant, but like it can be irrelevant to this matchup in terms of like who has the striking advantage. Because like you said, while it is nice to hear him say from his own words that he's improving and comfortable there, all of his fights literally hit the ground like right away. Like it's like get right to it, like Brandon Allen fights. It reminded me of that. So I do think that ultimately the fight is going to be won or lost on the ground. I definitely understand your take on the competition level. This gentleman is also a guy who's fought in LFA, which I think is huge. I mean, just like you, LFA is just a really good regional promotion. Like a lot
Hold
of.
up, let me stop you right there. Because I'm glad you brought that up. I saw someone tweet this the other day, and I immediately knee jerk. I thought, whoa, this is incorrect. And then I thought about it. The tweet said, quote, "Sorry, but not sorry. I love the LFA, but if there's any division for whatever reason, I'm not interested because I don't think their talent level's up to par. 155. And I thought about it, right? Because when you read a tweet or a post or a comment or hear something from someone whose opinion you respect, and they say this LFA division is not exciting, I'm not interested in it. You're like, oh, well, maybe it's like one of the lesser populated divisions, blah, blah. You're 155. You go, hold on a second. But think about it. What's a big indicator of how good a regional promotion is? They're champions, right? Like I go sometimes based off of like, how strong is this regional promotion? Who did they put? Like, who did they put in the UFC? You know, for example, in college football, who is killing it in college football? When you look at a personnel and roster base, the teams that are putting the most bodies in the NFL, it's kind of the same scenario. And man, you think about the LFA's lightweight division, how many guys that have come out of the LFA's lightweight division have gone on and had moderate to successful UFC careers? Not many. Not off the top of my head.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I would just say, like, it is a promotion, though, in general, where we have seen a lot of, UFC talented fighters,
Right.
Brendan Allen, Eric Anders. I would just say kind of it's like a developmental thing. I think we'll see as time progresses here that those other divisions get some more, some more fighters that, move up and go to the UFC. I just think
doesn't that sound crazy, though? I hate to interrupt you again, though. Like, lightweight.
Right.
We're talking about lightweight here, right? Like
Yeah,
155 pounds.
Right, yeah, because it usually, if you look at the various promotions, it's usually a weight class that sticks out. But I see what you're saying there. It can be a little discouraging, I guess, from one view. But at the same token, I think that they're a promotion that knows what they're doing, and I think it'll just take a little bit of time to build up.
Regardless, though, let's talk about the meat and bones of this matchup. Move on to the next one. I think obviously the path to victory for Leavitt here is going to be on the ground. Flores, some things bothered me in the Frivola fight, right? If he crossed his T's and dotted his I's where he should have in a couple of scenarios, I don't think he's even in a position to get arm triangled, right? He had Frivola hurt in that fight. I think he got emotional in that fight. Do I think Frivola is far and away the best opponent he's ever fought? Yes. Do I think Leavitt has the potential to be better? Yes. Again, though, back to the point I was making. We don't know what this guy is on the feet. Get this. He said in an interview, I did not even have to throw a punch until 2 fights ago. What? You hear that and you're like, yeah, no, that's true. Bruh, I watched the film. You and I both did. That story checks out. He didn't throw a single punch in his first 3 or 4 fights. Three fights, I believe. Like, what am I supposed to make of your striking game if I'm supposed to analyze what you could do if you don't throw punches? And that's not to his fault. His submission game's good. If that's going to get him the wins, more power to him. However, guys that are going to want to put money on Leavitt tomorrow night have to be scared of the fact that they don't know what he's going to be like on the feet. Your last thoughts on this fight before we move on?
Yeah, I guess the closing remarks would be in addition to Flores. Like, I think Leavitt, we could see him get better and better based off his age and his youth. I mean, the striking is a little concerning because we just don't have much data on it. But that said, this is a matchup, though, where I do think he'll land takedowns. I just think he's a much craftier submission specialist. He'll probably get this fight to the ground and probably win by submission. But going forward, I see your point. Like, yeah, if he faces a guy with strong takedown defense and really good striking, and we still don't know that much about it, then I'd be like, okay, like let's actually see how this goes. So,
but we've been here before, right? You and I have talked. Remember when we talked about Greg Hardy and Jorgen De Castro? The whole narrative for me going into that fight was, I'm just excited about the fact that we're going to learn something about both of these guys here. And I came out of that fight arguably knowing less. So hopefully that's not the case here. That should be a fun one. Flores and Leavitt, those guys are both very talented. As we said earlier, Flores is going to try to get his second crack at a UFC contract. Nothing to hang your head about with your first crack coming in a defeated effort to a guy in Matt Frivola, who's done pretty well for himself at this point.